There have been many people to wear the Robin costume over the years, and most of them have done incredible things. But when we're talking about Robin, there are really only the four main Robins that we're talking about. Namely, Tim Drake, who is the smart detective one, Jason Todd, who is the anti-hero with guns, Damian Wayne, who is the angry ninja raised by assassins, and Dick Grayson, who is the golden boy.
The pure and perfect Dick Grayson, the first Robin.
Or at least that's his image to most people who haven't read into his character in the comics. Because like us all, Dick Grayson has some skeletons in his closet. And I mean that literally, as this video is going to go over 5 people that Dick Grayson has killed. Number 5. Barbara Gordon. In the Elseworld stories, there is one called Batman and Dracula, Red Rain, in which Batman is transformed into a vampire and fights Dracula. And what is not to love about that concept? Seriously, if they made an Arkham series video game of that story, the fanboy inside me would just cry with happiness. But in the comic book, Countdown Presents The Search for Ray Palmer, a few DC heroes from the main universe visit this vampire universe in search of Ray Palmer, as they need him to save the universe. And currently in the vampire world, Dick Grayson is hunting Vampire Batman, as he is the one that has killed his parents. So he asks out Barbara Gordon on a date, as she escaped an attack from Vampire Batman. And he wants to know how she got away and if she saw where he went. At which point she realises that he only really asked her out to find out information on Batman. And so the date is over and he walks her home. But on the way, they turn into a dark alley, which is never a good idea in Gotham. And true to form, Barbara then goes and transforms into a vampire, and she tries to kill Dick Grayson. Though with him being Dick Grayson, he of course manages to win the fight and stakes her, killing her. Now, some might say that vampires are technically undead, so it's not the same when you kill them. But they are sentient and able to make decisions, and they can move around and talk like normal people, and live normal lives like normal people. Yes, they can't go in the sun, but then neither can albinos, and they are very much alive. So personally, I count vampires to be among the living, or at least alive enough to count as being in the living. And incidentally, in the end of this issue, Dick Grayson does face Batman, but he is unable to kill him, and so Batman bites him and he becomes his Vampire Robin sidekick. And I've got to say again, it's a shame that we still haven't got a video game of this story, or at least a film where Batman becomes a full-on vampire. Thank God for the vampire episode in Batman the Brave and the Bold. Number 4. The Creeper, Guardian, and Martian Manhunter. Frank Miller's Return of the Dark Knight is one of Batman's best comic books, and one of the most influential on Batman that has ever existed. However, everything he's done with Batman since has just not been of the same calibre, and his comic, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, seems to just be trying to recapture that magic from Return of the Dark Knight, and kind of failing. But anyway, in this comic book, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, we learn that Batman has previously fired Dick Grayson for not being good enough, and this, combined with everything else in his life, like his parents dying and then being trained to fight psychopaths in fancy dress costumes, have sent him somewhat nuts. And so he decides to get improved, and he undergoes gene-altering therapies to give him superpowers, and now he has a healing factor that makes him practically immortal. So when he returns into the Batman world, he comes dressed like the Joker for some reason, and he's pretty hard to kill, and he manages to kill the Creeper, and he also kills Guardian, and most impressively, he kills Martian Manhunter, who is on par with Superman in terms of raw power. Though with that being said, this version of Martian Manhunter has had most of his powers taken away thanks to nanites in his body, courtesy of Lex Luthor, which does actually make it a bit less impressive. And he of course kills Martian Manhunter by burning him alive with gasoline and a match. Number 3. Keiji Beast. In the comic book Grayson, Future's End, a story is told backwards, with each page going to an earlier moment in Dick Grayson's life, slowly unfolding to tell the full story. And in the comic book we learn that Spiral is teaming up with the president of Russia, who is Keiji Beast at this point in the future. And they're teaming up to defeat parademons, basically just to stop them from attacking the people of Russia. But while Dick Grayson and his partner, Helena, are busy fighting parademons, Keiji Beast sends another group to kill off innocent civilians, who don't agree with his style of ruling Russia. And since he is killing off innocent people for little to no reason, it's quite easy to see why they don't agree with his leadership style. But after this has happened and Dick Grayson learns the truth about what's happened, Keiji Beast is honouring him and Helena with a medal. and Dick Grayson decides to take action against this mass murderer and kills him in front of a large crowd of witnesses and the media. Now, why he doesn't kill him secretly is a good question, but it is said that Keiji Beast doesn't make many public appearances, and even private audiences are rare. This is for security reasons. But with that being said, is there really anywhere that Spy Dick Grayson can't break into? No, there isn't. So to me, it reads like he wanted to be caught for killing Keiji Beast, either because he knows he won't be able to live with himself, or because he thinks that he should die for murdering a man, even if that man is a vicious killer himself who he can't allow to live. But either way, Dick Grayson is later hung for his actions. Number 2. Otto Nets. Otto Nets was a Nazi supervillain who was originally killed by Damian Wayne, but he didn't die. Well, he did, but not completely, as his mind was uploaded to a computer to allow him to live on. But Otto didn't plan on staying like this forever. He intended to be downloaded into another body, and he had his sights set on Dick Grayson's body, and it's easy to see why. He's young, handsome, and in great shape. So Otto Nets transferred himself into Helena Bertinet's body, because he knew that Dick Grayson would want to save her, because the two of them have been partners working for Spiral, and they've grown rather close. And so Grayson sacrificed himself to save her, because the only way that he could get rid of Otto Nets' consciousness in her body was to take Otto Nets' mind into his own body. And when Otto Nets tried to take over Dick Grayson's body, Dick Grayson used his training, combined with his hypnos, to fight back, and he was able to wipe Otto Nets from his mind, effectively killing him off for good. You may wonder what hypnos is, but it's basically nanites in his bloodstream, in his eyes, and his hands that allow them to manipulate other people's minds. This means erasing people's memories, erasing their faces from computers as well, and being able to manipulate other people's minds, implanting false memories, and in this case even erasing a Nazi who's invading his body. But as I say, this effectively means that Otto Nets is finally gone for good. Unless of course the writers intend to later retcon his story again and have him say that he made a backup copy of his mind, which isn't impossible, but it seems quite unlikely at this point. He wasn't a particularly popular villain to begin with. And although you could argue that Otto Nets wasn't truly alive, as he was just a mind without a body, at the end of the day he was still able to think and feel. And you have to ask yourself that if you erase someone's entire life from their mind, destroying all their memories, wouldn't you effectively be killing them? Especially if they were completely erased from that body, and the body would then just live on in a coma. Technically they're still partly alive, but really the part of them that was alive is dead. I mean, it's up to each person to decide for themselves if you think this counts as death, but I personally think if my mind was gone, I would count that as being dead. So I count this as a death. Number 1. The Joker. Now this might surprise you since the Joker is actually still alive in main continuity, but in the comic book, The Joker's Last Laugh, the Joker believes that he is dying, though in truth it turns out a doctor has altered a CAT scan of his brain just to make it look like he's dying. He did this because it's the Joker, and the Joker had pissed him off too much and he wanted to get some payback by making him think he was dying. But because of this, the Joker decides to go out in a blaze of glory, and orchestrates a prison break and Jokerizes a whole host of supervillains, killing a lot of innocent people, which really must have made the man who altered the CAT scan stop and think about his life's choices. But anyway, later on in the story, Tim Drake ends up going to Arkham to try and end all of this, but he is unfortunately captured, and then while the supervillains fight with each other to decide who gets to kill him, Killer Croc takes him away to eat. And then Huntress is called upon to go and rescue him, even though she isn't at this point part of the Bat family, officially speaking. But she's the only one who's available, and so Oracle sanctions her and sends her in. But when Huntress gets there, she finds only Robin's uniform and his bones, and reports back that he is dead. And the death of Tim Drake is just too much for Nightwing to bear, and so he goes off alone to finish off the Joker himself. So he attacks the Joker and lets his rage get the better of him, beating him until eventually he beats him to death. Although to be fair, the Joker is goading him all the while he's doing it, making fun of the fact that he actually hit Jason Todd harder than Nightwing's hitting him, and just generally being a dick in Joker style, until eventually he kills him. Only to find out that Tim Drake wasn't actually dead at all, but the Joker is definitely dead. Unfortunately at that point, Batman arrives on the scene and performs CPR on the Joker, and is able to bring him back from the dead, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it can be argued that Batman saved the Joker's life so Dick Grayson wouldn't be a murderer, But I personally think that Dick Grayson killing the Joker would have been the highlight of his career. I mean, it might have been bad at first and he might have had regrets, but over time, those regrets would get less, and every other superhero on the planet would not judge him for this. Except maybe for Batman. Not to mention the fact that there isn't a jury in the world who would convict him for it. But I do get why Batman did it. After all, as we all know, murdering a man changes you, and he didn't want Dick Grayson to have to carry the guilt. Although with that being said, he still feels pretty bad about losing control and killing the Joker in the first place. So maybe Batman was right, because if he feels this bad about nearly killing him, he'd feel even worse if he'd permanently killed him. But after he is brought back to the land of the living, the Joker is taken away, battered and bruised though he is. And though some might say this doesn't count because he comes back to life, you have to appreciate that in order to come back to life, you have to be dead in the first place. But if you disagree, then please let us know in the comments, along with whether you think they should have let the Joker stay dead, because personally, if I'd been there, I'd have been stopping Batman from performing CPR. I mean, admittedly I couldn't stop Batman from doing anything, but what I'm saying is, the Joker should have stayed dead. And there are also a few other times that do deserve a mention, such as the creature Paragon, that was built like Frankenstein's monster, only using superhuman parts from the Justice League to give him the powers of the Justice League. These weren't actually the organs from the Justice League, they were just cloned from their tissue. And Dick Grayson shot the Paragon through the heart, killing it. Though whether it was actually alive in the first place is a bit of a mystery. True, the flesh was alive, but it's not revealed if he had a mind or not. It may have just been basically a computer program that controls the flesh like an organic machine. It's not made clear either way. And although some might think it's weird that I don't count this as a death, without a mind, you're not really killing it. That's like saying killing Moss is killing someone. Yes, you're ending life, but it's not really properly alive. Or at least, it's not like us. And there is also the supervillain Blockbuster, who has killed countless people. And although Dick Grayson doesn't actually kill the villain himself, he does stand by and let Blockbuster be killed by someone else. And he does absolutely nothing to stop them. So, although this is not a true murder, it is still a co-conspirator murder. And some might say that not saving someone's life when you know you can, is the same as killing them yourself. And that is 5 times that Dick Grayson has killed. Which of these deaths was your personal favourite? And are there any that you disagree with being on this list? And are there any other times that Dick Grayson has killed that you think should have been on this list? Be sure to let us know in the comments, and I'd just like to say a quick thank you to those who made this video possible by donating to Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. Patreon is a crowdfunding site that's helping us to bring you more videos each week and to raise funds for adapting comic book stories into short animated films. If you're interested in donating, a link is in this video's description. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.